Welcome to another special episode celebrating the 20th anniversary of 150 Slayton Avenue, also known as the IALR main building, which opened in 2004. This is the fourth episode and final of this special series. Joining us are two very important guests who are vital to driving economic transformation. IALR President Telly Tucker and Linda Green, Vice President of Economic Development and Executive Director of the Southern Virginia Regional Alliance. I certainly want to thank both of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be with us. Telly and Linda, please introduce yourselves and give a little bit of your background and career before joining IALR.
Thank you, Daniel. Sure. So Telly Tucker, President of the Institute for Advanced Learning and Research. My background, I'm a Virginia native, graduate at James Madison University. Go Dukes. My background, ironically, started in education when I graduated from JMU in 2004. I spent 3 years in secondary education teaching middle school students. The irony is that I never wanted to be an educator because my parents and grandparents were educators, and that was the last thing I wanted to do. But as karma would have it, I would start out as a teacher, and then 3 years later would transition into economic development in the Lynchburg City's Economic Development Office. And fast forward 20 years, spent time at both the local and state level and different economic development organizations. Really fascinating the diversity of the local economies and regional economies throughout Virginia and how each community has its own priorities and goals in terms of economic development. But it's been I've been blessed with a fortunate career to work with a lot of really talented professionals. And of course, no community that I've ever worked in has been more collaborative and more forward-looking than Southern Virginia. And so I'm delighted and honored to have been able to come back in 2022 to take over the helm at IALR. So thank you for the opportunity.
I'm Linda Green. I'm with the Institute for Advanced Learning and Research in a very fortunate position because they merged that with the Southern Virginia Regional Alliance to take in that the management of that partnership. So I get the opportunity to work not just with IALR, but with all of the economic developers across our region under that umbrella. I have a varied career. I was a Goodyear quality engineer, and from Goodyear, with over a decade there, I went to the Center for Innovative Technology, doing technology-based economic development. I was the state's director for manufacturing and then entrepreneurial and federal funding. From there, I went to the business incubator here in Danville, the Dan River Business Development Center. We had helped to form that, to start it up, and I went back to help them in a time when it was down and hit a very great spurt in Danville where camaraderie between the city and county took off, and during that time they started a lot of dual initiatives. The first was the Dan River Business Development Center. They placed it in the county because they were already planning for the placement of the Institute for Advanced Learning and Research in Danville. So you can see they started strategically, let's do something in both areas and unite the two. I spent 7 years at DRBDC on a 2-year promise and loved every minute of it. We worked during a time when a lot of industry was starting to come into town, working with the new vision. It was the same time that the Institute was coming out of the ground and then built. So when I started at the Business Development Center, the Institute was actually housed in that building just for that interim while they were building this facility. So I would like to say that I've been here since the birth and enjoyed every second. I then worked for Congressman Hurt for the 6 years that he was in Congress. I loved that. And then got the call from Jerry Gwaltney saying, would you consider coming back to the Institute to run the Economic Development Office? Probably the best move I've ever made in my life because I was able to connect all those dots coming back here to a campus I already loved. It wasn't a campus then. It was one large building, and I remember the night of the grand opening, and everybody around came, black ties and all, celebrating that night and how important this organization was going to be. Little did they know what was going to happen.
That's very interesting to hear about your backgrounds. Linda, You just spoke about being able to see the building come out of the ground. With you being in the area for so long and seeing the construction of the building, what did you think of the building as it was being constructed?
We had no idea what the grandeur of the building was going to be like. And when you said it's going to be the building on the top of the hill, little did you imagine. I have to commend Larry Hassan with Dewberry. It's a brilliant design. It's you see the steel beams raising from the ground. We'd never seen anything like that here. And while you drove to high towers in big cities, this was different. This was on a hill in the middle of a region that didn't have a university. It didn't have a 4-year university of state making. So to see this come from the ground, like I said, when they opened it and people got to walk into that great hall, there was a sign of glee. But the funny thing is that all these years later, I watch people walk in with the very same expression on their faces. But it was shocking to people to have this in their neighborhood was something that changed the mindset of people and has continued to change their mindsets.
Now, Telly, you came to the area later on, but what were your first impressions of seeing the building?
So I came to Danville in 2014 as Economic Development Director for the city. And I vividly remember Joe King, who was the city manager at that time, personally doing a tour around the community through all the industrial parks and kind of showing me the lay of the land. And I remember, when we got to the Institute, I think I remember looking at it going, I've always wondered what's in this building because, as a Lynchburg native and driving up and down the 29 corridor, it's very visible from the bypass going around Danville. And it's a beautiful building that sits up top of the hill with glass and flags flying high. And you kind of always wonder what goes on there, right? And so, like Linda mentioned, I think my first perception was kind of the wow factor of this is really incredible. This is something that most people don't expect to see when they come to Danville, Virginia. And as I, entered the building, kind of the grand atrium and the technology that allows, at that time was one of probably the largest flat screen monitors I'd ever seen. It makes an impression. And I think I would agree with Linda 100%. When many guests come in today, they are blown away by that building, and by the building and by just how well it's preserved. And when we tell people it's 20 years old, most people go, this doesn't feel like it's 20 years old. And I think that's a testament to the leadership that's been here through the years, and certainly the facilities team that takes care of this building. They've done a fantastic job.
Yes, they have. On previous episodes, we've had the former maintenance Jeff Forlines and current facilities manager Stuart East talk about the maintenance over the years, as well as the architect and designer Larry Hassan of Dewberry. Our mission statement is driving economic transformation. What does that mean to Southern Virginia?
It's interesting. People will ask us what we do here, and we start out by reciting our mission statement and catalyzing regional economic transformation. It's very broad. I recognize. Just if you listen to those words. But I think it's intentionally broad to give us the flexibility to respond to what industry needs are and what our, constituency needs are in terms of residents who live in this region. So when I think about economic transformation, we think about, I think I'll start from a macro level. We think about what industry has been here historically, what has happened in terms of its characterization and in many ways legacy industries downsizing or leaving the area, and then what is going to sustain future generations of Southern Virginians in terms of good-paying jobs that allow them to support their families going forward. And so I think naturally one tends to think about how do we utilize this asset that is the Institute to help influence positive economic growth, meaning attracting new companies to the region, helping our existing industry grow, helping them find solutions to challenges that they're having, whether that's talent, technology, research, or education, whatever that may be. And we have always, I think, been a very nimble organization, and organizations that was designed to be able to respond very quickly to whatever the needs were in the community, and to hopefully help plug and fill gaps that may not be met by some of the other entities that already exist. And so we try to sit in that space where we ask ourselves every day, does every program that we offer, is it making a difference in terms of economic transformation? Are we helping improve the lives, the regional economy, the local economy, by a number of ways? You know, that could be visitors, it could be jobs, it could be economic development, recruitment. It can certainly be tourism and hospitality, and you know, with the folks in our conference center, certainly is the awareness and the, I would say, even national and international notoriety we've gotten for some of our groundbreaking work in controlled environment agriculture and applied research, and of course with the rapidly growing manufacturing advancement visibility now with our United States Department of Defense and the Navy certainly as a partner. We just recently I heard an anecdote from someone who was traveling in Wisconsin at a manufacturing summit, and it was about technology, and the presenter on the stage, who is not from this region, asked everyone in the room to raise their hand if they'd ever heard of Danville, Virginia. And they said like 3/4 of the room, hands went up. So for someone in Wisconsin to mention Danville and what's happening, particularly on this campus at IALR, and to have 3/4 of the room recognize that, I think in many ways that validates and speaks volumes to the awareness that now the entire nation has of what's happening here and the impact that it's having. And so that's a kudos to the leadership who envisioned this type of entity to be able to drive transformation, and certainly to all of the employees who have worked and are continuing to work here every day to make that economic transformation mission a reality.
I think Telly stated exactly what I would think of economic transformation here, because it was all inclusive of a lot of different things. Being in economic development, people often confuse economic development and economic transformation. Economic development's the process of bringing in and retaining existing employees. And believe me, it's a process. It deals with a lot of different things that are more on the side of permitting, zoning, building, site development. Economic transformation takes it that extra step. It's that step that says intertwining all the partners, all the communities, and I love the catalyzing and collaborating with partners, because I think the economic transformation here is all about how we work with the people around us. We couldn't do the work that we do were it not that we were catalyzing. So we're not doing it all on our own. Sometimes it's Telly and Jason working to catalyze Department of Defense projects and to bring alive something that they want to do with the flexibility and skill sets that are here at the Institute. And what a pleasure to be doing something like that on a national scale. Sometimes catalyzing economic transformation is Julie's work when she's working with GoTech and spreading that across the Commonwealth, changing the cultural awareness at a middle school level of what you could do in manufacturing and in a skilled education environment. Sometimes it's us calling on Scott Lohman and Scott working with everything that he does in R&D. And believe me, he's an ace in anything agricultural, but we also call on him for polymers and for machining and other topics, because they have equipment and characteristics and capabilities that allow them to connect with universities and research partners, bring them into the campus of the Institute. So when I think about economic transformation, I think about breathing new life into this community, completely transforming what people think they can do. When we bring a new prospect in today, we tell them that whether they want to do research with a university, whether they need skilled workforce, whether they're worried about the pipeline 20 years from now, we're going to show them something unique and different in the way IALR has worked with this region. And it takes one walkthrough to change mindsets.
It certainly does. Now, with our mission statement, has that always been the mission statement since the inception of this organization, or has that evolved and been refined over the years?
That's a great question, Daniel, and I don't actually have the answer to that question today. I'd have to go back and look to see if it's, but I think that there certainly has been an economic development focus for the Institute from the very beginning. Linda, you may know better than
I
that.
do. It's actually in the code, so not written identical to where we are right now, but if you look back at the original code around us, economic transformation has been the idea since day one. So, and I don't know that people always understood that. I've heard people say it's economic development, and I think we're quick to say it's much bigger than that. Economic development helps to transform, but it cannot do it on its own. And so it has been a continuum that it was thought of as this grander vision. Definitely that's evolved in how we implement it.
How has IALR evolved over the last 20 years as far as the programs, the staff, and the campus?
I will start as the long-timer in this from the standpoint of being a lot older than Telly. But with that, when you looked at the evolution of IALR, it was fantastic that we now had a place for conferences. So from the first ribbon cutting where people walked into the atrium and saw the magnificent Great Hall, saw the atrium and the grandiose conference center rooms. Their imaginations went there, but then instantly the teaming with Virginia Tech, bringing in research partners that filled the halls of the research, that happened in the inception. The advanced learning has evolved over the years, finding where the gaps were. I think Julie Brown's been fantastic in that role, overseeing that department, but it's looking at where the gaps were and where we needed to make a difference to transform the region, and always that transformation was part of it. So in the early days, it was very different. So the initial, I remember the 8-post rig and some of the automotive work that was going on, but now I see that carried on to Virginia International Raceway and some fantastic spin-off work that's being done by Frank Delapia there as the part of the GCAP Center, the Global Center for Automotive Performance and Simulation. So they do fantastic work on behalf of Virginia Tech. So I see the transformation bringing in research from Virginia Tech that now lives on for companies around the world who are working there at VIR doing research. Then I look at the education and I see those programs not just all around Virginia, but people asking for them for other states and other countries. So that's definitely evolved from where are the gaps to fill in the gaps, and they're filling them and filling them fast. I think the buildings are one part of it, but I think when you look at why the buildings sprung up, you see what was the Hawkins building spring up to do research because there were more research needs. Then you see launch bays added because Telly was bringing in industry so fast that there was a need to look at where they launched when they come into the U.S., or where they launched if they were doing a new operation and needed a bay to do that. So we've seen companies move their headquarters from Greensboro to Danville and start out in those launch bays. We've seen international companies come here, get their ISO certifications in Telly's bays while they were preparing to take the next step into industry. But I don't think any of us envisioned the buildings that are here today and the different purposes from ATDM, working with Department of Defense. We saw one building that had conference facilities, research, and was going to work with education. We didn't know that it was going to be so transformative that agencies around the country were going to come to do their work here.
You know, I think about previous leadership here. the Tim and Nancy Franklins of the world, the Jerry Gwaltneys, as Linda mentioned earlier, Mark Janak as well, and others who've been at the helm of leadership here. And it's when you build something like an institute, I don't know that anyone has a crystal ball can say exactly what it's going to be doing 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. But I think the lessons that you learn along the way help refine it and prepare it for future success. So I have to give credit where credit is due and to attribute some of today's success to the leaders who've come before me, because there are things that they have learned only by being a pioneering some of those ideas and trying them. Some of them work. Some of them maybe not as successful as we would have liked for them to be or as impactful, but that's part of learning, right? That's part of the advanced learning purpose of engaging in new ideas and new challenges and figuring out how to refine something. Anyone who's in manufacturing will tell you, you probably learn far more from your failures than you do from your successes, and you learn how to improve those processes and optimize them. So I think we are a microcosm of that in that analogy in many ways, where we have, in the earlier years, I know there was a large focus on connecting to universities, and we've always had great partnership with Virginia Tech, certainly, and our local university at Averett and Danville Community College. But I think those relationships have shifted and morphed into something that is more sustainable and more long-term effective for the vision of the Institute and the value that we bring. I think about one example. I talked to Dr. Scott Lohman, who leads our applied research team, and he talks about how research has changed. And he's really looking at, it's interesting that the application of the research, it's not research for the sake of, I'm just curious and thinking about what a particular, endophyte or beneficial bacteria or some agricultural concept might be. But I'm really focused on research for the sake of how do I help drive economic development, recruitment of industries who are in the ag space? How do I help entrepreneurs who might be aspiring to grow their own agriculture business? How do I move the needle in terms of cleaning or helping create and promote cleaner foods by not having to use insecticides and pesticides, herbicides, et cetera, because the future of the Earth's population will need to be supported by controlled environment agriculture, and that's a critical benefit of controlled environment agriculture. So it's been a shift in even within divisions like applied research who've been around from the beginning, and their focus is much more on applied. How do we do research and development for the sake of helping drive growth and impact tomorrow? Not 50 years, just 50 years from now, but how do we really help companies and entities that we work with benefit, hopefully in the next 6 months, a year, 2 years. When I also think about naturally anyone who drives to our campus goes, wow, this has really grown over the last 20 years in terms of the physical structure of the buildings. Thanking Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia, for its investment in the Center for Manufacturing Advancement, which we cut the ribbon. I think Governor Youngkin cut the ribbon on in October of 22. That was a testament to an investment the state made in IALR to help think about the future of manufacturing in the region, and how do you help manufacturers optimize processes so that they're more efficient, more effective, more profitable, that they never have to consider leaving the region, right? They always maintain that competitive advantage. That's a different focus that hadn't existed in the past for IALR. And the irony behind Manufacturing Advancement Division being our newest division and our youngest one, but also being our fastest growing and now our largest one, that's really, I think, a testament and underscores the value that they're bringing and the need for the services and technology development that they're providing. So whether you're talking about workforce development or technology development, there's just a tremendous amount of demand for that type of service and thought leadership. So those are some ways that I think that IALR has grown over the last 20 years. We continue to keep our, the boots to the ground and keep our ear to the ground in terms of listening, watching and learning, and being responsive to what industry needs. And I think that's what will carry us through the next 20.
Daniel, it may be slightly off our course, but I would love to hear Telly comment on the importance of leaders that have been here from the inception and a board that has allowed us to flex and grow.
Sure, Linda. As I mentioned previously, folks who were here from the very beginning, like Tim and Nancy Franklin, they're being pioneers of something that's new and helping shape the infrastructure, build a culture of an organization that exudes leadership, confidence, professionalism, respect from, not only locals, but in Richmond and in Washington, D.C., and then having each one of the leaders, I think, that have come before me, each have their own unique talents, experience that they've brought to the table that have continued to add. So if you think about, I like using maybe a cooking analogy, right? Everybody's got an ingredient that adds to the finished product. And every ingredient, every leader's ingredient that gets added to it makes the entree taste that much better. And so the success we're having today has to be attributed to those leaders that have come before me and shared their expertise and helped the organization grow. My only hope is that I don't disappoint and I can continue doing the same thing, and knowing full well that one day someone will come after me and hopefully will build on what I've been able to bring to the table in terms of leadership. And certainly we have an amazing leadership team here. Linda's just one of about 13 or 14 people who sit on our executive leadership team. They each are subject matter experts in different areas. And I think one of the characteristics of a good leader is putting people around him or herself that in many ways are smarter than they are, trusting them to lead and to use their expertise, and giving them the tools to be effective leaders, and giving them the autonomy to make those decisions. And so I think that's been a trait of IALR as well, that helps us remain nimble and responsive and helps us have impact at the end of the day.
I know both of you have had your fair share of meetings in this building, especially in the various boardrooms that we have. One of the most impressive boardrooms that I've seen is boardroom 206. Talk about, using the main building as a tool for economic development over the years.
I would love to. When prospects come into the region or existing industries come in and use this facility, when they walk in, at first they're in awe if they've never been in the building before. So first, it's not something that they expected to see in this region, and it opens their minds to what they can do here. It opens their minds to what can be here when they see that the leaders of this community have invested and supported this region with this facility. It changes their mindset instantly. But then when they go up to the boardroom, is usually their first meeting room. It's a great room. From confidentiality, being able to lower the shades during key presentations, there's not one bit of thought that has been missed in planning for the room, for the building. So when they're sitting there, it's as though they were in a metro city, in a major boardroom. It has all the amenities and acoustic microphones, everything that they would expect in a modern boardroom. But it's bigger than that. It's raising the shades during a boardroom and someone staring out and us sitting in the room and thinking, maybe we placed him on the wrong side because he's looking outside. And then it's a site consultant. So at the end of the meeting, he says, the site that I just saw on the big Megatron in your atrium, where is that site and what is it? Which led to his next prospect visit with the prospect for the mega site. It's them seeing those skills flashing on a big screen that shows the child's excitement when they're working with Legos or when they're doing 3D coding or robotics or welding. All of that's simulated in a quick way. I'll give Telly a lot of credit for this because in some of our early economic development projects, he would say, we're going to have to move fast. Why don't we put it on the screens as we walk around? It's going to be there for them everywhere they go. And that's kind of the epitome. Institute Conference Center, they bend over backwards to make sure that that experience gives them the impression of a 5-star meal when they're eating. It's the impression of the best conference facility they could be in, knowing they could utilize that themselves for their company if they come here. It's walking by the smaller rooms or scheduling the smaller conference rooms so that they can go in and do private calls with their corporate headquarters back, usually in another country. It's all those pieces. And then they walk down the halls for the research, and they hear the stories of Scott working with agriculture and controlled environmental agriculture and learning that we've got AeroFarms, the world's highest integrated vertical grow facility in the world. That no person touches those greens from the time they're put in the soil to the time they're harvested. This is the work that's going on, the R&D that's going on here that leads to these kind of companies locating here. And then they walk through the campus, they see GoTech, they see those students and interacting with labs across the country from this building. So this building all of a sudden gets much larger than just the surface here. So then we walk them across to the Center for Manufacturing Advancement. From there, they walk through the halls in the Hawkins building. They see across the hill what the building's going to be, but they walk through training for the Department of Defense. And they'll ask questions like, how can you assure me that you could customize a program that's unique for our business? And it's really easy for Telly and I, because we show them what has been customized for the Department of Defense here in the facility. So it's the magic of an organization that sprung from one building that gave a vision to the community to what it is today. And I think as fast as the visions emerge, you see them implemented. And that doesn't happen normally in education. So it's a special place.
Yeah, I can't recall any prospect visit that I ever led that didn't start at the Institute or didn't come to the Institute at some point in time during their tour of the community. It's that impactful and I guess impression forming when somebody's not familiar with the community to come here. And I think you asked specifically about our Executive Boardroom 206. The design of that it's magnificent in the sense that it allows you to see both the beauty of the region that makes this region beautiful. So you look out of the front glass windows and you see rolling hills and you see beautiful trees and you see nature that makes a rural area like ours really attractive. But then you kind of spin your chair a little bit and then you see the technology that Linda referred to in terms of the large screen. And, of course, the room has been regularly updated and equipped with latest technology that enables for video conferencing and, virtual connections with people all over the world and, numerous flat screen monitors that allow for visibility during any presentation. And, of course, a room that's large enough I can't even recall what the capacity is, but probably 30-plus people in the room. To have it sitting in the front of the building and being able to have a glimpse outside, but also inside, and then seeing, every morning about 11 o'clock, seeing about 150 to 200 high school students, governor school students, and Academy for Engineering Technology students come out of the educational wing and go down the stairs. And anyone who's sitting in that room can see that, right? But that's not a distraction. That's actually impactful in terms of making an impression on this is our future, right? These young people are here on this campus. This is not just something that sits on the hill that looks pretty, but it's actually being used for the purpose for which it was built, to help inspire the next generation of leaders. And so I think strategically our conference room 206 is placed in the right place for you to kind of get a glimpse of a lot of what's going on this campus. And whether that was intentional by design or we got lucky, we'll just say it was intentional, and that our friend Larry and Dewberry, and my understanding is I think there were some Virginia Tech architecture students that had some input on the design of this building too. So kudos to them for the entire team that worked on the design, because I think it's fabulous and it continues to serve us well.
Oh, yes. We'll have to get Larry back on the podcast to ask him about that. But that's a great observation about the boardroom, 206, the executive boardroom. Over the years, we have hosted a number of economic development announcements and conferences, as well as international speakers and VIPs. Can you speak on hosting these events and people here over the years?
I'd love to, and I think it's easy because we had one yesterday that brings it to mind, but thinking back through the years, it's been special. I think one of the things that make this building so special for the announcements are the leaders who've been behind us since day one. And it's kind of the foundation of this building, I think, is built on the strong leadership of the people who serve on Telly's board today. There's been continuous commitment from that group. And I say that only because for every event we've held, we had the full support of the Institute, and they knew that they could support us fully because their board knew exactly why we were doing it and stood behind them. So for a lot of people, there may have been a concern how the board feels. We never have that concern. We've had that leadership always. And I say that because they're going to be the first ones to greet companies. When we need leaders to come and meet them, they're going to be part of it. And when they walk into the Great Hall, it will completely transform anything they could imagine when they're speaking to their company employees and making them feel a part of the community, but a special part because the entire leadership shows up. So when we do announcements here, it's the building. It's walking in and having on the big screen their video running on the screen. It's having the governor come in and make a speech in the front of an audience with all the governor's school and AFT students up on the traverse around the rails, looking down on the speech and having them look up at them, or it's that whole hall being filled with ATDM people. When we use it for an economic development announcement, they know that the whole community is supporting them and that they're going to succeed here and that this building is going to be part of their future too. So it's their building from day one. When we do the announcements in the atrium, I've seen them stand, fill the atrium with the big screen showing their presentation, the governor and the executive team of the company in the front of the room. Or like the groundbreaking yesterday, they did a great groundbreaking on the side of the mega site. Wonderful announcement. What was the first thing the company asked for? We would like to do the follow-up luncheon for our employees and all the leaders in this community at the Institute. So they walk into the atrium again, seeing their video, the skills that their employees are going to have, walk into the Great Hall, and the Great Hall is equally special. When that is fully utilized from the standpoint of the staging, the IT is unbelievable, the support that companies have when they want to use the Institute, and they always do. Having the IT to support every element of what they need to show makes their presentation easier. So I think that's the one thing I would say that's unique and different. We've worked with a lot of different organizations, a lot of different hotels and conferences that we work with those. Our Institute conference team is different. They're working directly with the IT. They are customizing everything that's needed, and it's turnkey. And it's integrated with the leadership, with the people in the community. It's a full service package. So when the companies come here, the building's a huge part of it, but I have to say the leadership makes it real.
We have had certainly numerous economic development announcements here, but two things really come to mind. One, Governor Youngkin gave an address in October of 2022, both to cut the ribbon on the Center for Manufacturing Advancement and then also to kick off the ATDM AMCOE Summit here. And he did that from the atrium. We transformed the atrium into effectively a stage, and it was standing room only. There were probably 400 people in the room. The Governor's School and Academy for Engineering Technology students stood on the second level and kind of looked down on everything that was going on. And it was this special moment where you kind of looked around and you were surrounded by young people and industry folks and educators and community leaders. And it was just a really special moment that I don't know when we designed the atrium whether we thought that it would be a place where you would, host governors to provide keynote addresses, or even our sitting president today, who also spoke from that atrium years and years ago when he was a candidate for vice president. I think that's just the fact that people will see the atrium particularly and want to have that caliber of an event here. It really does speak to kind of the feel of the space, the ambiance of the space, just the intangible, like, when you have a special moment and you kind of have that euphoric moment and it's just really, it's hard to put into words, but it's really special. We've certainly had numerous conferences in the Great Hall. And even we've thought about that in our newer buildings too, the Center for Manufacturing Advancement, when we cut the ribbon on that building and we announced the United States Navy Center of Excellence for Additive Manufacturing. We did much of that in the Center for Manufacturing because similarly they have an atrium. They have a conference center with glass that overlooks, the kind of eastern side of campus, where you can see the new construction that's happening there on the new ATDM National Training Center. But you also have these incredible high bays where you can see very large equipment. You can see it both from the office above and through those glass windows. But we also had that ribbon cutting ceremony, and we had the likes of the United States Secretary of the Navy, Carlos Otoro, in that space. We've had, 2- and 3-star admirals speaking in those spaces about the mission of what they're doing to support our Navy and our military in the submarine industrial base. These things are happening right in Southern Virginia. These very important leaders and people that have a lot of responsibility for work that's going on to protect our nation and to lead our nation, have set foot in this community first and have set foot on our campus and in our buildings and chosen that as a platform where they want to deliver key messages. We couldn't be more proud of the fact that we're able to support that kind of effort and those kinds of interactions on our campus. So we will continue to use this facility for that purpose, to drive inspiration. And I hope that it motivates the next generations of not only Southern Virginians but Americans in general to make a difference in the country and the world that we want to see.
Yeah, this building is truly inspiring, not only from its architecture design standpoint, but also just how this building is laid out, the thought process of what is in this building. I know both of you have traveled all over the world. This building is so unique because, we have not only a full-service conference center with a great hall, auditorium, various boardrooms. We have a cafe. There's an admin wing. There are educational classrooms. There are research labs for different purposes. There's also a high bay. That's all in just one building, as well as having international guests and prospects, visiting governors, as you mentioned, the vice president years ago, to local officials, regional representatives, educators, and various ranking military officials. What other building in the world could have and serve such a multi-purpose function?
Very few.
I think it's a great point. It says a lot about flexing to meet the demands of the region. It's been able to grow with the region's growth, to create the region's growth, but then to accommodate anything that the region has needed as that happens. I think about when we used the parking lot to land 4 executive helicopters because we only had 30 minutes with the company for the site meeting, and they flew over the mega site, landed in the parking lot here. Facilities met them with golf carts. They exited right on the front lawn so they could go straight through the doors and right up to 206. We had 30 minutes to show them how great this facility was. This building did it. So it makes a difference. It makes a tremendous difference. And like you said, it's the flexibility, but it's the flexibility of the building, the genius of the design, and the flexibility and commitment of the people that really makes it work.
That's what we need to see more of, is helicopters landing on our campus.
I think Telly does need a helicopter pad, but being 2 miles from the airport helps us out too.
Well, we do have a landing pad out back, but I don't think it's ever been used. We've already talked about, how modern this building looks for 20 years old, and we continue to have people that come in here and are in awe of how this building looks. They think it's just a couple years old, and certainly not 20 years old. But what are your thoughts on the next 20 years?
I'll begin by first thanking the city of Danville and Pittsylvania County, who actually own the building. This is owned by the Regional Industrial Facility Authority in the city and the county, who used many of their resources with the Tobacco Commission to help construct this building, and for believing enough in the Institute to continue to reinvest and allow us to operate and exist in this space. I have to give a head nod to that leadership because that wouldn't happen in every community. And I think the next 20 years, to answer your question, the next 20 years will require that same thought leadership, that selfless, leadership that says, this is what's best for our community, and this is what's helping change the future and positive growth for our community. And it's not about, I want to put my office or how much money can we make off of a conference or putting somebody in a space. It's how do we use this asset, this building, this campus, to continue to drive growth for the entire region and beyond. We are a political subdivision. As such, this is not a taxable entity. And I say that because it would be very easy for the city and the county to say, let's put a company there that pays taxes in the region. But what they have really continued to underscore is by allowing a political subdivision that's non-taxable entity to continue to grow and to flourish and support economic transformation in the region, it actually helps generate tax base and jobs and economic growth in the entire region. And so that's an investment. That's what we describe as an investment in something that on the front end costs money, but certainly delivers in terms of return on investment on the back end. And what I look forward to is, as we come up in a few years on 25 years of existence, I really look forward to telling the story of the economic impact that the Institute and this campus has had over a period of 25 years, because I think it's going to be remarkable. I think I think a lot of people who've come before us, and even those of us who've been around for quite a while, forget sometimes because we're in it every day. But when we have a moment to look back, I think people are gonna be completely blown away by what this asset has had the effect this access has had on the region. And hopefully we will continue to do that over the next 20 years.
I think Telly said it well. I think whatever the building needs to be, whether it's autonomous, whether it's artificial intelligence that's the research going on inside it, whether it's industries that are in it launching new and innovative new approaches so they can work with DOD in the campus that's here. I don't think we know exactly what it's going to be, but we know it's going to flex and meet the moment. I think what has been set is a trend where our elected officials, where our leaders are not thinking about the glory that's in it for them today. They're thinking about what a difference it'll make for the next generation. And that's a mindset change that happened with this. It's planning for things that won't necessarily give them accolades during their term, but when it comes full spin, it's going to make a difference for generations. And that's the way they're thinking now. And that's the way I think about what this campus will be 20 years from now. It will be what it needs to be a step ahead of the rest of the nation.
Yeah, those are all very good thoughts, and I hope that we're all around to see what comes in the next 20 years, not only for the main building and the campus, but for the organization. And that's all I have for you today. Do you have any parting thoughts?
I just say thank you for what you all are doing with the podcast. Highlighting this building, this campus, and the leaders that brought it about is critically important.
I'll echo those sentiments. Thank you for giving us a platform to share just a little bit about what's happening here on our campus. And I always like giving a charge to our listeners, to those in the community, to be active, become a part, get engaged with what's happening, not only here at the Institute, but in the community, and be part of the positive change that this region is seeing, because the people make the difference. And so that's my call to action for the listeners out there. But thank you again for having us.
Well, certainly thank you for, again, taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us. And Caleb, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this series and discuss the history of the anniversary of IALR, the main building of 150 Slayton Avenue. Thank you. Megabytes, IALR's on-site cafe, features everyday favorites, convenient ordering options, and an eager staff ready to welcome and serve you. Our enticing menus offer something for everyone, from a fresh, well-stocked salad bar, wraps, sandwiches, and our rotating hot buffet offered on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Megabytes is open Monday through Friday from 9:15 a.m. until 1:30 p.m. To view menus and for more information, visit IALR.org/megabytes.